Anyway, so going into the training topic, we're talking about the 5-minute chart and just simple, straightforward rules about the 5-minute RTH chart in approaching it. Now, I'll use the S&P just because that's the chart that I have right next to me right at the moment. And some very simplistic rules, right, that we need to follow. When we're looking at this, first off, we want to zoom out and gain a general perspective. That's step one, right? Step one, gain perspective. Right? We need perspective. We need to know where we are. So rule number one is I need to know where I am. Right? Now, as far as where am I, what I'm talking about when I'm referencing that is looking at it a bit further and saying, okay, now I know that I have to gain perspective, but what does that mean? Right? So gaining perspective, do it like this. Gaining perspective is where are we? Right? Oops, that's not what I wanted. I'll do it this way. Fine. Along with where are we? Are we inside or outside gapping? So are we inside or outside gapping? Or another one, are we just, actually, I guess that could be B, but are we gapping up or down? Is there a gap, right? I guess that would be a pretty fair one. Are we gapping up or down? Oh, I just realized you guys can't see what I'm typing. There we go. Okay. Let's try this again. So number one is gain perspective, right? And what I mean by that is where are we? Are we inside, outside gapping? Are we gapping up or down? So my first rule is direction. Where are we, right? What direction are we going? What are my major levels of support or resistance? Major levels of support or resistance from previous day, right? That's really just kind of what I'm looking at. Where are we? What's going on? I don't care about what happened over here. This is irrelevant. It might not be depending on the context, but right now I can look at just this and see what's going on. We have a gap up. We're inside yesterday. There's enough information just there. So gain perspective. That's rule number one. We got to know where we are. Now, going beyond that, a couple other things that will definitely help along with gaining perspective. Once we have that perspective, decipher trend or not. Right? Is this market, based on the information that we just gained, trending, or is it not trending? Right? What's it doing? Well, we gapped up, but we gapped inside the previous day, and realistically, we're not making any new ground up or down. We have an unfilled gap below us, but there's an unfilled gap above us. We're not really in a trend, are we? Right? I mean, it's going up, sure, but in the general scheme of things, not really. We're just kind of flat. So flat to slightly up becomes the context, right? That's what the trend is, slightly up. Once we know what the trend is, then we have to go in and adjust entries, exits for number two, right? And what I mean by that is I'm not going to trade a bullish market or a bearish market with a trend type trade. It doesn't fit, right? If we're trending, then I need to be looking to take with trend entries. So with trend or not, those are what I have to decide. Right now, given where we are and the fact that we're opening up and we're not really opening up on any major levels of support, we've got support here, we've got resistance here. That's about all we have to work with, right? The gap's down here, there's an unfilled gap up there. There's not anything giving us any context. So right out of the gates, I'm already thinking range bound. I don't need any other information that we're already kind of range bound. So I need to be approaching today with a market mentality of range to slightly up. Remember what we just talked about. It's bullish, but it's also a range. So what does that tell me? Well, that means that I don't want to be buying above bull bars. That's a terrible spot to be a buyer because this isn't a trend, right? I mean, kind of. It's a very, very weak sideways range bound bull trend. So that tells me that I want to buy low. I want to buy cheap. Buying below previous swing lows. Notice all the congestion that happened right there. When the market came back to it, notice what happened, right? There's responses there. That's why. Because when it came down below the next one, what happened there? Buyers bought more. We're in a range. So we need to know what type of entries we need to approach the market with. Now, this is where we can subdivide this a little bit further, because if we break this down into trend entries will have different rules, right? So trend entries, you want to be buying above candles with stops usually, right? Buying rising support, buying strong bull bars, or weak bear bars. That's fine too. Buying above the EMA, whatever your trend deciphering utility is. Buying above the EMA, going with trend, right? That's what I'm getting at there. So trend entries are going to look very different from what you're going to see on range entries. Trend entries, I'm buying above candles, I'm selling below candles. You can vice versa this. Buying rising support, buying strong bull bars or weak bear bars, buying above the EMA, making sure that we're staying with the trend. Buying only when price is above the EMA, because then we can also say buying the EMA. You expect the EMA, the moving average, to hold when you're in a trend, right? That's expected. So those are the types of things that you would expect to see with a trending market, right? Targets typically larger 2-to-1 plus because it's a trending day, right? It keeps going. And stops, because of that, can be smaller. Right? So those are trend entries. Now, the other side of it is range entries. Right? Now, range entries, totally different, right? Buying below candles with limit orders, right? I want to be buying pullbacks. I want to be buying dips. I want to be buying below swings. I want to be buying traps. I got to be buying low. What's another thing? Buying horizontal support or traps below swings. Equally as important. Buying only when price is below the EMA, or selling when price is above, because it's a moving average. It draws price back to it, right? That's what it does. What are some other things? Right? We don't want to buy the EMA. We want to take profit at the EMA. Differences, right? These are all giving us different clues, different indications. Another one, aside from taking profit, right? What do we know about ranges? They're smaller. They're consolidated. Targets, typically smaller. 0.5-to-1 or 1-to-1 is going to be where you're hovering in a range. Stops have to be larger. That's a range. That's how they work. So you got to approach this a little bit differently. So we gain perspective. Where are we? Right? We're in a range. We're upward range. So I know that I want to be a buyer, but I want to be a buyer on the lows. Decipher. Are we in a trend or not? Not really, but kind of, right? We're sort of in a trend. It's a weak uptrend. Range bound mostly, so I still want to be buying low. Now that I know that we have range entries, get rid of that one. This is what I'm focusing on. Now that I know what my focus is, what am I looking for? Right? This could be second entries. It could be buying swing lows. Remember what the approach is, right? I'm not going to be taking second entries with stop orders. That's not the point of ranges. Ranges are buying below candles with limits. Buying below swings with limits, right? We're buying with limits. Limit orders, buying dips. So what does that tell us? Well, that tells us that if I want to be a buyer, I need to find locations to be a buyer. Here's an obvious swing low, right? So with that little swing low under there, that tells me that I could be a buyer here. What do I expect from buying down here? typically smaller targets, 0.5 to 1 or 1 to 1, scalps, right? So what do I know to expect from this area? If I'm buying here and my stop has to go below the lows, I'm not going to expect a 2 to 1. That's dumb. That doesn't make any sense. This is a range, right? You're expecting 0.5. Where did the market go? 0.5. Because that's the expectation. Nobody's expecting big moves out of this. They're expecting scalps. When it gets back down to the lows, what's the expectation when it gets down to the lows? The low was at 52.50. Buyers will buy 52.25. What's their expectation down here? Well, they don't want to see this range deviate. That would be a problem. So their stops can be about that size. What do we know about this type of trading? They're not going, right? They're not going for 1 to 1s, or, well, they're not going for 2 to 1s. Going for this kind of target is dumb. You're never going to get it. That's not the day type. Instead, we need to approach this realistically and assume they're going to be going for 0.5, half, 1 to 1. Do you want to know why the market stopped here? Because that's what scalpers were looking for. That's their target. Over and over, and probably over again. Right? Same thing here. What do they use? It's happening right now. So we can use this range. They don't want to see it deviate lower. So let's use that range. Got the stop down here at the lows. Their entry point's 1 tick below the low. Their target's right there. 57.50. Or around here. I mean, you know, good enough, front run, whatever, but we're right there. And that's all they're expecting. They're not expecting, they're not expecting anything crazy. They're looking for a target up here at 57.50 because that's all the market's telling them that they should get today. It doesn't mean that they're going to exit everything, but if they've got 10 contracts, they'll exit 8 or 9 of them there and just leave that last one to see if maybe they can get lucky this time. You know, maybe they can get that one run into the end of the day. But the major objective is right ahead of us. So those 3 rules, that's it. There's a lot in those 3 rules, but those 3 rules are it. I need to gain perspective. Where am I? Are we in a trend? Yes or no? Based on number 2's answer, adjust number 3. That's it. Hopefully that helps. But there's, I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Yeah, you can go crazy and you can add as many, you know, millions of levels as you want, of course. But is it really going to be adding to those rules? Not really. Those rules are the primaries. Those are what we always default back to.